Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. Joining me is Lou Colagiovanni. He is not only a longtime David Pakman Show supporter, he's also the editor of the We Survive Bush, You Will Survive Obama Facebook page and a journalist with Examiner.com. So, Lou, we're here to talk about Anthony Weiner and the scandal that has kind of blown up while I was on vacation. So question one is, we now have learned the name of Sydney Leathers, or Sydney Elaine Leathers as she is known by, and she has been identified as the individual who has been sexting or exchanging these messages with Anthony Weiner. So question one, before we get into it, so people understand, how do you know Sydney Leathers?
Sydney was an employee of mine. I hired her in December of 2010 as a content creator, administrator on We Survive Bush, You Survive Obama. And we've been working closely together ever since then. So for over 2 years, we've been working together.
Okay, so during the time that these messages were exchanged with Anthony Weiner, were you in contact with her at that time?
I was in contact with Sydney every day, but for business purposes, we weren't, I wasn't made aware of the Anthony Weiner scenario until April 12th, 2013.
Okay. When you were made aware of it, how did you find out about it?
Well, basically, one day after being contacted by Jason Weiner, Anthony Weiner's brother, she felt threatened by his contact, and she told me she had a story that she needed to tell me, and on April 12th, she told me the whole sordid affair.
Okay, so in April, Sydney, who had been in touch with exchanging these sexual messages with Anthony Weiner, comes to you and says, Anthony Weiner's brother has reached out to me, and you said threats were made. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
I wouldn't say threats were made. I feel that she felt threatened. Jason Weiner didn't threaten her by any means. He more along the lines contacted her. You got to keep in mind, David, the April 12th is coincidentally enough 2 days after the New York Times article came out with Huma and Anthony's playbook. And so it's coincidental enough that I get brought in on April 12th. Jason Weiner contacts her on April 12th. And also there's evidence to show on thedirty.com that Anthony Weiner mentioned his own brother on April 12th in a message which has been published by The Dirty, and which I also had well before it became public knowledge.
What do you know to be the nature or the specific messages that Anthony Weiner's brother sent to Sydney Leathers?
I have I don't have any official documentation that a contact between them happened. The only reference that Sydney makes to Jason Weiner, besides on the 12th, and besides Anthony Weiner making reference to him on the 12th, she mentions that his brother's aware of the situation in a later conversation that we had in June. And also it should be noted that Jason Weiner has publicly said that he had no involvement in this scandal, but the timeline that we're working with here just simply doesn't make sense. Either Sydney is lying, which I think is absolutely ridiculous at this point to say that, or Anthony Weiner is lying, or Jason Weiner is lying. Now, of course, they're both on the record lying dozens of times, so I think it's more reasonable to believe Sydney's story than it is to believe their account of the facts.
What is the kind of concise summary of what Jason Weiner's involvement is alleged to be?
Well, here's the deal. Like I said, on April 12th, he contacts her. His position was to just take her temperature, as I've been quoted saying in the past. He's looking to see what her feelings were, if they were going to be if she was going to be a problem for the campaign. It wasn't a long conversation between the two of them. In fact, I don't think that she even responded to him whatsoever. But, there was certainly contact between the two of them, and that's how I got brought on in this, which is ironic in and of itself, because that was the trigger for the whole situation. Had he not made contact with her, who knows what would have happened. But after he contacted her, she told me, she told other people. I mean, this was the catalyst for the whole situation. So their intent on silencing her only made her come forward even sooner. and it's their own fault that this happened.
Is your sense that Sydney Leathers initially had any idea on her own to kind of create a scandal in her contact with Anthony Weiner? Or did the transition from whatever initial contact took place to these sexual messages happen in a way where it was not planned by her? I don't know if that question's kind of clear, but how would you evaluate her initial intentions here?
Well, I've heard that question several times over the past few days. I don't believe that Sydney entered this maliciously. I don't believe that she entered it to become a media darling as she has become now. But also, as I was quoted in CNN and other publications, her and I had very long, very detailed conversations about how to profit from this, the best avenues to release it. I mean, I sat on the story for 2 months. We could have released it initially when Anthony Weiner announced his candidacy, but that wasn't the best time to release it. We wanted to wait for him to become a little bit more popular to see if he actually had any juice in his capitulation to the public and saying that he was going to run for mayor again. And then he actually came back in the polls, and the George Zimmerman trial was over, and it was really just the perfect time for this to come out.
So talk to me about that a little bit. Why did you want to time this in the way? Am I hearing that you wanted to time it in such a way that it would be as detrimental to his campaign as possible?
Yes, guilty. Very guilty of that.
And tell me why. In other words, in your opinion, and I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Should this type of thing matter? In other words, let me give the Elliot Spitzer example for a second. Elliot Spitzer is a guy that I consider to be incredibly capable. And I question whether, even though he had this scandal that damaged his credibility, the prostitution ring, et cetera, compared to the stuff a lot of politicians do, getting with prostitutes is not that influential in terms of his ability and capacity to govern if you believe that he is otherwise capable. Or am I wrong about that?
No, that's a fair statement. I don't think the Elliot Spitzer scenario and the Anthony Weiner scenario are comparable, except that they had sex scandals. I mean, listen, Elliot Spitzer gave himself a downgrade for his job. He wants to run for comptroller. Anthony Weiner decided that he deserved a promotion after lying dozens of times for weeks in the media. So if the question is, should they be allowed to, fandangle around in different sexual scenarios? I mean, sure. But at the same time, politicians are held to a higher standard, not to mention the fact that when they go out and do these sorts of things, they give ammunition to our political enemies. They create scenarios to which we can't discuss the issues anymore because now we're talking about this. Listen, I'd much rather be discussing banking fraud or the Goldman Sachs aluminum manipulation scandal with you than this, but unfortunately, it's where we find ourselves.
What would be, in the ideal scenario, what does Lou Colagiovanni want to have happen now that this information is broken? You sat on it until the time at which you believed it would be most damaging to Anthony Weiner's campaign. What's the ideal next thing that happens?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify that I sat on the information because Sydney told me and asked me not to put it public. Up until, I think it'd be now 15 days ago, last time I spoke with her about this matter, she told me that the information was not going to go public, that she had spoken to a lawyer, but the lawyer said that this is non-beneficial to her. So that's one point of clarification, that I sat on it knowing that it should build up momentum, but I never released it because of her wishes. Otherwise, I could have released it at any time before this period. Now, to the second point of what I'd like to see have happen, I originally called for Anthony Weiner's resignation along with millions of other people back when the scandal originally broke. That was during the midterms, and it was very detrimental to the party. And now that the scandal's broken, I mean, it's vindication as far as I can tell, not to mention how many times Anthony Weiner's story has changed. First, he said he didn't have any relationships with any women. Then he said he had 3 women, then 6 women, then 10. Now the number's 13. Now, for individuals to believe that that's the actual number, after that's what he's offered, after lying about it for so long, and then he went on TV and said, listen, I love my wife, I'm sorry for my wife, in his original press conference, and then he admits to 3 other relationships after that press conference where he said, listen, I'm sorry to my wife. Obviously, he was not sorry enough.
All right. Lou Colagiovanni, editor of We Survive Bush, You'll Survive Obama, journalist with Examiner.com. Incredible stuff that this just landed in your lap, Lou. I mean, it's just amazing the way things have happened. We can certainly disagree about the importance of any particular scandal, but it's just amazing that this is the way things have happened, and I thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me on, David, and I'll continue to always support the David Pakman Show and independent media.
Thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.